Okay. Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for being here, and thank you to our panelists that will be with us today. This is a conversation, a series of conversations that the Illinois Community College Board is putting on in order to address some of the questions that we have within the community college system and what it is that we do as a college system to address several different needs that actually happen. I'm Jennifer Foster. I'm the Deputy Executive Director for the Illinois Community College Board, and I'm very pleased to have this conversation today, our collective conversation about community colleges, CTE programs, and how we address the workforce shortages that are happening within our world today. So as we begin the day, just to give you a little bit of background, this month is Career and Technical Education Awareness Month, where we recognize the great contributions CTE brings to so many students in Illinois. Career and technical education prepares individuals for high skill, in-demand employment that further Illinois' global competitiveness. CTE programs offer flexible scheduling, work-based learning, stackable credentials that provide a pathway from education to employment, not only for our high school students, but also for returning adults, veterans, and also incumbent workers. CTE, in terms of career and technical education, the success is amplified by all academic support services, business engagement, other learning opportunities. CTE's reach in Illinois' workforce continues to be very expansive. Currently, there are over 4,300 different CTE programs that are offered across our community college system. CTE accounted for a little more than 34,900 graduates in the community college system, with 53.1% of those graduates earning degrees and certificates in CTE programs during fiscal year 2020. So a lot of things are happening. A lot of individuals are getting those degrees and they are getting those certificates. And we wanted to recognize, again, that this is CTE month and the conversation around CTE and how we can help through all of our workforce shortages. Today, we are joined by a few of the experts in the area of workforce and career and technical education who are leading the way to prepare a skilled workforce of the future. With us today, we have Dr. Sheila Quirk-Bailey, president at Illinois Central College in Peoria, Illinois. We have Marc Battista, who is the Associate Vice President of Workforce Education at Oakton Community College. And we have Kate Kreamer, who is the Deputy Executive Director at Advanced CTE, an establishment or an organization that helps a lot of states as they prepare and implement career and technical education throughout the United States. So welcome to all of our panelists. And we thank you for being with us and giving up some of your day. We promise to keep this to 15 to 20 minutes, no more than 20 minutes. I know this is an exciting conversation that we want to get into, but we'll try to limit it so that we can continue to have this dialogue in other areas as well. So the first question I have, and I will ask Dr. Quirk-Bailey if you would address this. As the nation faces a critical shortage of skilled workers, how can Illinois Community College career and technical education programs be a part of the solution to meeting the workforce demands?
Thank you very much, Jennifer. Community colleges in Illinois are really the linchpin to addressing these shortages by aligning programming with the occupational shortages and meeting people where they are and removing traditional barriers to entering and remaining in those programs. Most adults who would love to have these credential programs are currently working multiple jobs with no benefits. So what do we do to give them time in their day? How do we remove those barriers so we can meet them where they are and turn them into the credentialed people that our workforce needs and that our employers need and expect us to provide? You know, earning those credentials not only changes the trajectory of the life of the people who earned it, but also changes the trajectory of life for that family, as well as grows the workforce and expands local economies. So community colleges really play a pivotal role in addressing workforce shortages.
Thank you, Dr. Bailey. So Marc, give us a little bit of what you're doing, what you're seeing within your community college district at Oakton as it relates to meeting the workforce demands.
Certainly. Thank you so much, Jennifer. I think, again, to Dr. Quirk-Bailey's point, addressing and providing those short-term certificate programs that upskill or retrain students is key in the community college world, and providing the opportunity for folks to become, skilled and enter into the workforce. I think another example that is unique to community colleges is community colleges, and Oakton included, our ability to partner with local, community-based organizations, local employers, regional employers, local municipalities, and other governmental entities. I think these collaborative relationships are poised to benefit the communities in which they serve. Oakton has engaged in multiple partnerships, one in particular where we have a partnership with one of our municipalities where we've worked closely with that entity within that village to highlight and identify folks that are underemployed or unemployed, and ensure that they can enter into Oakton, select with the appropriate advising an appropriate pathway for them. Short certificate programs where the village is covering the cost, total tuition, books, fees, and everything. So I think it's examples like this that really illustrate the importance of community colleges and our ability to address, the workforce shortages.
Thank you, Marc. Kate, as we have sort of tried to maneuver and understand this whole new world that we're in terms of COVID-19, it has presented some challenges to us as a nation and also in Illinois. How do you see, or what do you see CTE's role is as a major, what major strategy for responding to COVID-19 and workforce development?
Yeah, well, thank you for having me, and I'm really honored to be joining you. I mean, I completely agree with the previous comments, and sorry, given we're in a health pandemic, or a global pandemic, I apologize the metaphor, but we really see CT programs as both preventative, right, in terms of you're arming these learners with the core transferable skills and align with the industry needs that are setting them up for success, but also it's the remedy, right? It is the means of upskilling and reskilling of learners. And when you look at the data coming out and how this economic downturn is so different, right, from previous ones, but there are a lot of lessons we can learn. And when you look at from the Great Recession, about half of people that were displaced by jobs ended up shifting their careers, their sectors, and needed to be reskilled. I just read a piece from the Washington Post that the estimates are much higher actually for this, given just it is such the way that the jobs that have changed and how it accelerated so many of the trends we saw around automation, around focus on digitalization. It's just going to keep going faster. And what the new normal will look like when we come out of this, we're not really sure, but community colleges are nimble, they engage with industry. And I think as we talked to, and I know we'll talk more about they really can be that flexible to make sure those barriers are not there, to be able to meet those learners where they're at, which is absolutely critical. I think the only thing as kind of looking forward is, I think what programs will need to do is really take a deep look at their programs and not just think about the short-term occupational skills, but what are some of the emerging foundational skills that have been there but need to really be embedded, to think about not just preparation for a job tomorrow, but those lifelong skills, right? And knowing that there's a greater need for digital literacy across sectors. There's a greater need for those human skills, those that cannot be replaced, right, with machines or robots: collaboration, communication, problem solving, project management. So thinking about how are the ones that really can ensure that these learners are recession proof for whatever comes next, whatever. I mean, there's going to be another recession in another decade. And so how do we just make sure that those we're serving today are best prepared to weather that future storm?
That is true. It just seems like we do this, we go through the cycle of, it's going to happen again, and we have to just be ready and poised to make certain that we're able to handle those shortages as the workforce shortages as a community college system. One thing that you talked about, Kate, was the community college's ability to be nimble, to be quick, to offer those types of flexibilities for the students that we serve. And definitely COVID has definitely presented that those challenges for us all, but we seem to have navigated that pretty well. So I'm going to ask Dr. Bailey, would you comment on what you're seeing in terms of the pandemic? It has limited our in-person instruction. It has disproportionately impacted CTE programs that tend to be that hands-on type of learning. How has your college adjusted programs to respond to the new challenges and continue to educate and prepare an educated workforce?
We are very blessed here at ICC to have a very innovative and nimble group of faculty. So the first approach was to tape lectures, right, and still bring people into labs socially distanced. But it's hard if you're learning to be a diesel mechanic, even to have the lecture, right, when you're not in the lab, when you can't see the equipment. So they are hanging cameras over as they are in an engine and bringing things in. Our culinary faculty created food kits. So students would show up at assigned times and pick up their box of food. They would have an interactive session where they would do the prep together, where the technique could be evaluated by the faculty member as a student is demonstrating, as the faculty is showing how to do it. I mean, they have done absolutely amazing things. We have a horticulture faculty member who basically redesigned his entire backyard because he was showing on videos each of the processes. And in the meantime, now he's living in the Garden of Eden now, as he went through 2 semesters through COVID. So our faculty and our students, learning online is not everybody's, that's just not a good fit. We all have different learning styles, and we know that's not the best fit for everyone. And people who tend to go into hands-on CTE programs do that because that is how they learn, and that is how they, the joy they get out of, their occupation is to use their hands. So everyone has really risen to the occasion. And there have been areas where there have been much greater need in the pandemic, and community colleges have answered that. I know we've had a whole nother cohort of LPNs. Right, we've expanded, and because as you socially distance, now you're offering more sections that are smaller, so we could actually bring people into more programs because of that new scheduling. And our hope is that now that we've learned that, we can continue to further reduce barriers. So if a person can't afford gas, right, the car broke down, the babysitter fell through, can they not just join that session by Zoom in the future as an exception, even if it's a face-to-face class, as opposed to missing a week of class with a sick child and being so far behind they can't catch up? So the pandemic has had an impact, but it hasn't all been negative. And we're excited about applying the lessons we've learned to the future to help our students reduce those barriers even further.
And I think that is so key, is that all of our faculty, our students, our administration has really kind of learned from these. And, there's some things that I think that, definitely have to have that hands-on approach. But I think we've learned some things. We've learned, how to provide student support services to students in a different way. The pandemic has kind of forced us into learning things in a different way. And I think that is so important in continuing to make certain that our students can access instruction, but also make certain that they are preparing for the workforce. So thank you. So Marc, tell us what the pandemic has done in terms of instruction for you at Oakton.
Thank you. I would, same thing, reiterate what Dr. Quirk-Bailey had mentioned in terms of, I commend all of our faculty and our CTE faculty, especially, for their ability to demonstrate flexibility, adaptability and grace toward, students since March of last year. I think another, in addition to the cameras, the technology within the classrooms, the tripod cameras moving around the labs, following the instructors. We've also, the use of technology has certainly been accelerated. So, I mean, we've used in a variety of our CT programs different software, right, that simulate hands-on instruction and hands-on engines and such. And so that has certainly been applied even more so during this time, again, where students are engaged in simulated engine repair or brake repair prior to actually, touching the engine in their face-to-face component. These same softwares have been, utilized in a variety of our programs, from manufacturing to, computer networking systems. So I think, again, it's really, as an institution, being flexible and adaptable. And I think, in short, everybody from students to faculty to administration have all done really an amazing job, given the circumstances, in being able to, adapt and operate in this new reality that we've all, experienced. So again, I really have to commend faculty, especially, for their ability to engage students in a different way, right? So.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean,
so
just to build on that,
ahead,
I think a good thing to remember is that CTE has been around for over 100 years, right? The federal investment is 104 years long. And our story is one of transformation and evolution and evolving with the industry, evolving with learner needs, and evolving to how we serve learners, right? And the focus of having intentionality about serving equitably and really reaching learners that benefit the most. So this is just the next chapter in our story of how we continue to really support learners and support our economy.
I am definitely looking forward to, all of the things that we've learned and how we can incorporate that into our CTE programs of study. I think that it's going to be phenomenal, how things kind of change across education based upon what we've learned. The next question is for you, Kate. We know that Perkins 5 gives us a lot of flexibility in serving lots of different students, those that are maybe disadvantaged. One of the things that we've been looking at here in Illinois is looking at diversity of our student populations. And we know that equity is a huge piece of the Perkins 5 Act. And so what do you think in terms of community colleges? What can we do? What is community colleges' role in ensuring this diverse workforce? But how can community colleges support low income and minority students' access and completion of CTE programs?
Great question. And I'll just say, I'll commend the Illinois State, the Perkins Plan. Put equity was a very strong focus. So really commend ISB and ICCB for having that be so strong, and particularly ICCB's comprehensive local needs assessment kind of process really had an equity lens that was one of the strongest I've seen looking at many state plans. So I've got 4 quick responses that I'll go through them quickly. One is investing in those wraparound services and supports, right? So critical right now that you're supporting the basic needs, the food pantries, the technology needs, the hotspots, that the access, those key barriers are kind of removed. 2 is having more proactive advisement and engagement to support learners before they go off track and work with them to keep them on track, even if that means the track needs to slow down to meet their life circumstances. 3rd is collect whatever data you can to make decisions. Which programs are attracting more diverse learners and serving them well? Which ones aren't? Which ones should be scaled up and which ones are perpetuating inequities, right? Or where you might be tracking learners into programs that don't have good outcomes, and having a data-driven conversation about those equity gaps is so critical right now. And then I think finally is actually engaging directly with the learners and building trust with those in the communities. We recently had a conversation, convened a group to talk about how to engage learner voice in CTE policies and programs, and heard that surveys and other reactive engagement is not valued or trusted by learners. That's just, it's a check the box. They know it's a check the box. They're not going to be, they're not going to be honest and authentic and their feedback, their input. So think about who are your community partners that can be engaging and reaching those learners to have those authentic conversations, to tell them about the value and help them kind of make those best decisions for them and their plan.
That is so true. Dr. Quirk-Bailey, what do you see in terms of the employer's role as a part of this process of trying to support, but also trying to make certain that we have those programs of study that will help to enhance what we do? What do you see that in your area?
So we're really bringing employers to the table and engaging them in what we call co-creation. I think the history of higher ed has been, we know what you need, here's the program, right? So feel free to hire these folks, right? And just waiting for people to graduate from programs isn't working. I had a brand new startup come to me last week and say, I need 5, industrial maintenance mechanics. And I said, well, that's wonderful. Everyone in my program currently has a job, right, by the end of the first semester. And so that puts you at a 2-year waiting list if you want me to create them from brand new. But I tell you what we can do, let's hire people who have the right aptitudes, and we can test for aptitudes to be successful. Let's put them in an apprenticeship program, right? You support them for 2 years, they start working, it's 8 weeks on 8. So 8 weeks from now, you've got people with at least some basic OSHA skills, right? Who you could start working with. And 2 years from now, you have what you need. But in the meantime, right, they have been with you the entire time and they've added progressively, because what's their other option? To put an ad in the paper that nobody answers, or on Indeed, right? Or hire people themselves. What they do is they hire people themselves without the skill sets, thinking they'll train them, which never happens. So when you co-design those types of experiences, that can work very well. We put together a regional workforce, the Regional Workforce Alliance here in the Peoria area. And we have a group of companies and educators and community-based organizations that work on the emerging workforce. So how do we get students coming through K-12 far more interested in the areas where we know we have jobs? Then we have an upskilling team. How do we reach out and re-engage adults who have multiple jobs, right? No full-time and benefits, because they don't have the skill sets that people are looking for. So we upskill them. And then we have another group that's called Multiple Barriers. How do we create those deep partnerships with community-based organizations that once people are stabilized, then we swoop them up and get them into something that we can turn around quickly to get a job. And I couldn't agree more. Short-term training is so important, because when you are in a place of poverty and you are in a place of instability, to say, hey, sign up and 2 years from now, you'll be stable. They're worried about eating next week, right? That doesn't work. But it's also then so critical that all these short-term programs stack into something that is more meaningful. So let's get you stable. Let's get you the essential skills. Let's get you that first job, right? You stabilize there. And then we have a way to pull you back in and take the next step, and pull you back in and take the next step. So looking at that from the three, right, from that emerging workforce, the upskilling, and that multiple barriers is really a way for communities to come together. And when we developed our essential skills program, we did that with 84 organizations, half of which were businesses. We had the presidents of Heart Technologies, a major technology company in the region, you know, at the table the entire way. So when you approach this from a co-creation point of view, as opposed to we've looked at the data and boy, do we have a deal for you, just makes all the difference.
I like that variety. I like that flexibility. I like meeting not only students where they are, but meeting employers' needs where they are currently, because that's one of the things that we hear so often. Sometimes it takes so long for an individual to get, but you know, that having multiple entry, multiple exit points for individuals, strategies around that so that individuals can get into the workforce, sustain themselves, and then move forward. Thank you so much for that. Appreciate that. Marc, what you want to add to that?
Absolutely. So I think, you know, great points, especially, you know, around the engagement piece. I think, you know, we mentioned earlier about the nimbleness and the flexibility of community colleges. And within CTE, when we speak of CTE on the credit side, I just wanted to make a point about, you know, our career focused programs on the non-credit side, where we can, again, there's even more flexibility and adaptability and nimbleness, where we can create, you know, and this is something we're in the process of doing more with our programming, is creating shorter, you know, accelerated programs on the non-credit side, with the point of then, you know, allowing those students that have skilled on that side then apply for, you know, credit for prior learning, which then can seamlessly move into, you know, and be awarded college credit on the credit side in a packaged path, you know. So I think it's another strategy that is important to, back to the point of, people don't have 2 years to complete a program, or 16 weeks even is sometimes too long, right? So if we can get people trained in, you know, at that first level in 40 hours of instruction, and then loop it into a larger program on the credit side, is another tactic that we're, you know, we're employing. So.
Thanks, Marc. All good conversation that we have here. So I'm going to just kind of shift a little bit and talk about the elephant in the room, which is declining enrollment. Declining enrollment across all of our different community colleges across the nation. Some of the things that we're seeing in terms of declining enrollment. Tell me, Dr. Quirk-Bailey, how has this impacted enrollment impacted your CTE programs, and what are some of the strategies that you are employing in order to get those students back engaged in instruction?
So the pandemic, you know, not only did the students not show up, but we actually forced some of that enrollment decline as well. Smaller class sizes, right? Course, you know, programs that had to be shut down. And then when you start them back up, they're off semester, right? So then they put them a semester behind as they go forward. So I think there's a lot of reasons for what's going on. But like I said earlier, we've learned lessons about how to reduce barriers through all of this. You know, usually in recessions, community college enrollment goes up. And how did that happen? Well, I don't have the job that's going away. So I'm going to get a job waiting tables or in retail part-time, so then I can go back to school to educate myself for that next job. Well, that wasn't an option this time, because those jobs in retail and those jobs, right, in restaurants and hotel, they didn't exist anymore, right? So this was a very different economy. So what we are doing in terms of enrollment is really focusing on, again, the lessons we learned to reduce the barriers. And now you're starting to look at how do we've had that lost year. A lot of our lost enrollment came out of not enrolling as many students right out of high school, right? A lot of them decided to take a gap year. So we're looking at right now, how do we expand and bolster for next fall, all of those gen eds, so we don't find out, and our students tend to enroll late. So we can't find out 2 weeks before the semester starts that I should have had another 10 sections of English, right? So we are working through strategies of how we can build that schedule, staff up ourselves to make sure that when we re-engage with this wave, that they'll be there. And we're also continuing to work with those community-based organizations. So as their lives stabilize, right? There's just a lot going on with the pandemic. As their lives stabilize, that we are there then to pull them through back into programming.
Thank you. Kate, what are you seeing nationally in terms of strategies that might be employed or impacts of enrollment on CTE programs?
Yeah, I mean, I think I totally agree with Dr. Quirk-Bailey. I mean, part of this is it's such a different economic situation. And also there's a global pandemic. Many people are, until they're vaccinated, are not comfortable going into a face-to-face environment. And I think there's, people calling question, is it worth my time, my money in a virtual environment if I can't get the hands-on? It's something I've not done before. So I think when you look at the data and you look at the trend and you look at what the research says, people expect enrollment to go back up, right? When the economy is suffering, community and technical college enrollment increases. And I think we will have that on the other end of this when things have stabilized a little bit more and people kind of know what people don't know what jobs are going to look like going forward, right? I mean, this is such a different kind of economic reality of the jobs that have lost, what's coming back, what they're going to look like. So I think people are right to be cautious about how they're investing their time and their resources. I will say, Aspen Institute has done some fantastic research around how to engage and communicate to learners about the value of community colleges. We've done similar research at the K-12 level, focusing on middle school and high school level students and their guardians, and Aspen did kind of companion research. And I mean, what's great is when I was reviewing this, everything holds, all the messages, which was done before COVID, about the best message is having programs that fit your life and that you're worth the investment, right? And that it's worth that they put their time, their money, their lost time with their family and their children to actually put themselves first, to invest in themselves. And so those are so relevant today, more so than ever before. So I encourage folks to look at that as you're building out your communications, about being specific with the skills that students will gain and how they'll apply in the real world, who you're partnering with, who those employers are. So they'll hear key employers that are familiar to them and kind of that add some resonance. Sharing the data that there are success, there are positive outcomes. And if you can have disaggregated outcomes, even better. And then having your learners be the voice, right? And the face of a lot of those communications in terms of the testimonials that this is really something that is valuable to them. So I think there is a communication strategy until we kind of get to the other end of the pandemic piece. Kind of I think the recession, the downturn will continue, but I think the demand will go back up.
Thank you. All are very important points here. So as we approach our last question here, I have multiple questions. I've been writing furiously here that this could probably go on and on and on asking questions, but I wanted to ask you to give me like one strategy that to overcome this workforce shortage. What would that be? In looking at things, all of the things that we talked about with community colleges, engaging partners, making sure we have those supports that are there. What is one strategy that we can employ in order to look at this workforce shortage that we're facing? Let's start with Marc.
Thank you. I think importantly, and I think we've touched upon it, in numerous ways, but I think that the partnerships, the collaboration amongst the different stakeholders within our communities, from CBOs, municipalities, employers, I think is a really important one, because we can't do this alone, right? This has to be a jointed effort, right? A collaborative effort. I think another important element is funding directly into the hands of students. I think this is a really important one, especially given, where we're at with the pandemic. People are in need, so the more funding that can be directly into the hands of students for training, irregardless of the length of program or, but something that leads to, an industry recognized, training and credential, I think are very important.
Well, similarly, I'm gonna reiterate something that's been said a lot. I think it's about being flexible, right? And how you support learners, how you engage with industry, how you design programs. As I said earlier, eventually we will go back to a normal, but that new normal will have different expectations around how learners are engaged, how they can access programs, the flexibility of instruction, and the security that they're looking for. And I think we don't have all the answers. And so just recognizing that it's gonna take constant adaptation, meeting learners where they're at, and industry partners as well. And I think that is embedded in or ingrained in CT programs at the community college in particular. And that just, I think, has to be even further kind of accelerated, and just that is the expectation going forward for everyone.
Dr. Quirk-Bailey.
If I had to focus on one strategy, I would say the focus of community colleges over the next year should really be the economic impact sweet spot of the intersection of jobs where we still experience workforce shortages, right? A subset of those that actually pay at least 30% above the living wage, and then the intersection of those that we can quickly credential people in to turn them around and get them back into the workforce. So I'd say over the next year, you take that suite of programs, and then we're lucky to have the Workforce Equity Initiative that funds that, but we need to find funding for that, because if you're currently working 2 or 3 part-time jobs to put food on the table, you can't quit one of them to retrain, right? So programs that provide wraparound services, that provide stipends, and we can very quickly move people out of the position they're in into positions that really make a difference. And I think not just a sweet spot for community colleges or for these individuals or the companies. I think that's where the state of Illinois needs to end up. Here's where you invest in this large state system to help people, to meet people where they are, to get them from where they are to where they can be more independent, as community colleges continue to apply all those lessons learned in terms of engaging employers and engaging with students through the pandemic.
Agreed across the board. I think that you all have touched on very great points, and I want to thank you for being here. Again, this conversation could go on and on for a long period of time. I think we just scratched the surface in terms of what we need to do as a community college system, but what the impact has been in terms of workforce shortages due to COVID. So thank you again for being here with us today. As we look at COVID, the pandemic, as we have highlighted it, workforce demands in terms of filling the workforce shortages is so critical. The CTE programs through our Illinois community colleges play a vital role in meeting the needs of our Illinois workforce. Understanding the immense workforce shortage, the ICCB encourages those to seek degrees and non-degree certifications in an effort to address the skill shortages. Community colleges play a vital role, a pivotal role in preparing individuals for a career in a high demand occupation. CTE programs provide a flurry of programs and services to prepare students to fill the jobs that exist of the future and currently. Partnering with high schools and local workforce areas and employers to develop model programs of study is essential. Model programs of study are designed to facilitate the seamless transition for students interested in demand occupations and fields from high school to college. It's so important. Engaging and recruiting from all talent pools within our community, particularly our youth, is essential for addressing workforce shortages. So we are, again, so thrilled to be able to bring these collective conversations to all of our watchers or viewers out there. And we thank you, our panelists of experts, for sharing your viewpoints. So thank you so much, and have a nice day.
Thanks, Jennifer.
Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you, Kate. Thank you.
Thank you.